Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton.
And this is Nate Drolet.
And together we form the A-Team. I kind of want to be Hannibal, but I also want to be B.A. Baracus. So I don't really know which one I am. Do you know who the A-Team is?
Yeah. I was just going to say I'm probably more like B-Team myself, but...
That doesn't...
I know.
Not the same thing. We can't even go there.
I know, it's a reference. It's a bit dated.
Yeah, I don't like your joke.
Yeah, it's
No, you're Murdoch. You're definitely Murdoch. And except for, I think it's Hannibal's van. I'm not really sure whose van it is they drive, but you drive a van. I don't.
Yeah.
So maybe we should paint your van A-Team colors.
We probably shouldn't paint a van with 290,000 miles.
Yeah, you have a point.
And it's American made, let's be honest.
Theirs probably was too. I mean, it was the 80s, for God's sakes. America didn't have anything Japanese at that point. So anyway.
It's rock climbing.
We are cranking these episodes out right now. We're here in Bozeman, Montana. Still having a great time. We kind of wrapped up with the youth team tonight, working with their parents tomorrow morning, which is going to be interesting. It's our first parent workshop. And even though when we started working with youth teams, I was like, I just don't want to deal with parents. I'm kind of excited to work with the parents. Like, I don't know. I think this could be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, we're going to go into practice and what it is, and then into mindset and the language they should be using with their kids, which I'm stoked for.
Yeah, we'll see if they listen to me. As far as you've got a kid, that helps.
Yeah, I've got a kid older than all their kids. So
yes.
I have way more experience, so you guys need to pay attention to me. What are we talking about today? This is your topic, so why don't you explain it?
Yes, so this is one I was really excited about. It's
you've been pushing it for like 3 months now.
For so long.
Let's do this one. I'm like, no, that's fucking stupid.
Hey guys, remember this one? Hey guys, pay attention to me. So it's, I wish I knew now what I knew then.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Not, I wish I knew then what I know now. The opposite.
Yes. So main idea being, it's not like we're always getting better at everything all the time. Like there are things that I know I used to do really well that it kind of got lost in the mix and I gave it up for some reason or another. And the more I reflect and the more I've been climbing and the older I get, like the more I realize, man, there's some things I used to do that were really smart, or they just happen to like work really well. And so I'm starting to go back to these ideas and these things that I was doing, like 10 plus years ago.
Yeah. And even though I think we both believe we've overall gotten better, that doesn't mean we've gotten better in the most efficient way. There's some of those things we should have held on to or could have held on to that might have made a big difference.
Yeah.
And did you know you look like Dave Graham when you're wearing that beanie?
Perfect. You can just refer to me as a wizard for the rest of this podcast.
Okay. Nathan the Wizard Drolet. Okay, so we're going to go back to our top 3 format for this one. I think this one fits well with that. So since it's your topic, I'm going to let you jump off.
All right. I'm starting with, this is my favorite of them, but it's trusting my intuition over going with just what seems logical.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, when you first start climbing, especially like I started climbing, I don't know, like 13, 14 years ago, like there wasn't a ton of information out. There was a decent amount, but it's like, I didn't have access to it. Like, it's not like I was reading books at the time. And so I kind of just did what seemed to make sense to me.
Sure.
With a lot of things.
As we all did.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? So there were a couple different things. Like there's some things that I definitely fell for. So to speak, and there's some things where I stuck with my intuition over time that I am happy about. And so there's some things that I've waffled on. So to kind of start with, one thing that I fully disregarded my intuition and I just like drank the Kool-Aid on was absolutes when talking about technique. So example of this would be when I started climbing, a lot of people were like, oh, doing something with momentum or like dynamically, that's cool. But if you can do it statically, that's way better.
Right. Well, that's true.
Fucker. So man, like,
No, kidding.
I did Frenchies every day.
Right,
Like,
right.
Not only that, I mean, like,
You have to be able to lock off in every single position you can get your arm in.
always.
Yeah.
Like, and so, yeah, I locked off everything. And even to this day, like, I don't train shoulder moves or lock offs really ever. And it's without question still my strength. Just because for the first, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years, I locked off every single move to the point to where if I couldn't lock off, I either had to lock off or it was a dyno. Like, those were my 2 speeds.
Yeah.
So that was something, and now I'm much more wary of absolutes. If someone says you should always do this, or like you should always climb with straight arms, or you should never let your feet cut. Anytime I hear absolutes now, like, man, that's a huge red flag for me.
Yeah.
Because
Totally.
there are no absolutes. It's like, there's no situation to where it's like, oh, you should never do this or always do this. Like, yeah, I'm very weary of that. And I'm starting to go back more and more towards intuition of like, well, what makes sense to me? Like, with these different things. Great example is, and these are things that I hear now, and these are examples of things that logically sound really good. So you shouldn't climb while training. You shouldn't climb till you're so pumped that your skill starts to break down, because it's going to form bad motor patterns.
Right.
Man, on paper, that sounds great, doesn't it?
Drives me fucking insane.
It's so dumb. Because here's the thing, like, if you want to be good in that redlining zone, you have to spend time there. Like, you need to know what happens when your skill starts to break down. Like, what's happening? Do you stop weighting your feet?
Yeah.
Like, do you start hesitating on things? Like, if you're going to get pumped when you perform, you have to practice how you perform.
Yeah. If your only endurance work is arcing and hangboarding, the minute you get pumped, you're going to fall the fuck apart.
Yeah.
Period. Your footwork's not going to know what to do.
So here's the thing, like, with something like that, if you're just always climbing until you're just bricked out of your mind and you're flailing and you don't pay attention to it, yeah, that can be a bad thing. However, this can serve as a highlighter for all of your technique flaws. When we get stressed, we fall back to our training. Great example that I like to use when I talk to people about this is I use you and me as an example. When I get really pumped and stressed and I'm not able to keep that under control, I climb really square. I start locking off, open hips, and man, I just like square up to every single move.
Yep.
And you do the exact opposite.
Yep. I'm like hip to the wall.
Yep.
Let's twist as much as possible.
Yeah, in your background, you have so much more experience. You've put in so many more thousands of moves of twisting. So for you, you start getting really twisty and drop kneeing.
Yep.
But the thing is, if you're not aware of that, if you get to a move that you have to climb square and you're only able to twist like that, that's an issue.
Yeah. And you might as well put yourself in that position while training. It's silly to put yourself in that position on your project and fall there for 7 days in a row when you could have handled that in the gym and done it on the first day.
Yeah. And so, like I was saying, stress serves as a highlighter. We break down during stress and we go back to our training.
Yep.
So if you're very much like an upper body dominant person, and when you start getting pumped or scared, you start weighting your hands heavily and your feet start skating, okay, like you need to start working on that. Like get yourself in a similar, maybe slightly lower stress position and really focus on your footwork. So that way the next time it happens, that's not the first thing that breaks down.
Yep.
So something that a lot of people will refer to is, it sounds like great logic. Like, it's one of those things like, oh yeah, your skill will break down. Don't do that. Avoid that at all costs. Yeah. Like on paper, it sounds good, right?
Yeah, sure.
But really it's like, that's just a roadblock.
On somebody else's paper. Doesn't sound good on my paper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I actually remember the moment that I recognized that as a valuable tool. And I was a 5'11" trad climber. And I realized that when I watched people get tired, their feet were the first thing that fell apart. And I went into the gym with the intention of, I'm going to get myself really tired and I'm going to think about my feet. I'm going to really focus on my feet. And that stopped happening to me for a long time. Like after I spent time working on that, there aren't that many times where I've gotten tired and my footwork fell apart.
Yeah. So now you've put in the amount of work. And actually, I remember reading something you wrote a long time ago when you said you would do 4x4s. Your last one would always be on a vert wall.
Vert wall. Yep.
Yeah.
So I had to really focus on standing on little tiny feet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's a great idea. Another example of this, and this is like one that really hits close to home for me, is climbing fast. Like there is this, and it goes very much with being pumped. Like people say, hey, only climb so fast that and you can do in control. Let's not push it any further than that because your skill's going to break down.
Right.
What that on paper, it's like, oh yeah, like I don't want to climb sloppily, so I'll just climb as fast as I can while climbing well.
Yep.
And then I stop there.
Which for me is like almost stopped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full sloth mode. But what that is in essence saying is stay in your comfort zone.
Right.
Don't branch outside of it. Don't try and get in that learning zone. Don't bump up against the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Stay in it. Because that's
get
how
better.
Exactly. Like when has that ever fucking worked? Like have you ever heard someone say, oh, and whenever you're learning how to play musical instrument, don't do anything that might cause you to make a mistake.
Right.
Like, only do things you can do perfectly every time the first time. Stay there.
Right.
Like that advice doesn't work anywhere in learning ever. So to me, it's like, that's a very frustrating thing. But on paper, it sounds great. So I think I did a really great job when I first started climbing of, yeah, you just kind of have, like, you don't know any better. You're like, oh, well, if I want to get better at climbing fast, I should climb fast. Like if I want to climb harder on crimps, I should climb on crimps. Like,
you mean common sense applies sometimes?
Yeah, but it kind of goes away. Like, you start thinking about things too much. And so to me, that's something that I very much lost a sense of, was just trusting my intuition. So yeah, that's my number one.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, man. I think I'm also at a disadvantage here because you've been thinking about this for 3 months while I dismissed it.
All you've been thinking about is how terrible of an idea this podcast is.
That's my number one, actually.
Yeah.
No. My number one is actually, and most of mine actually, and probably most of yours, are things that we've identified as things that we can work on again. And they're things that are making their way back into our regular practice. And mine is try hard.
Yes.
I'm not actively working on it right now because to actively work on it, I would have to actively be rock climbing. And that's not happening, though it's about to. We'll see. And but it is something I've brought back in. When I was a younger climber and I was a traddy, I just went for it. I went for it all the time. A muerte. Like, you'd have to pull me off the wall to have me fail at anything below complete and total utter failure. That's how it was every single pitch. But once I learned how to project and I learned how to work moves and I learned how to make something feel perfect or damn near perfect, make it feel effortless. We always hear about, when I finally sent, it felt effortless. When I learned how to do that, I was like, I want that feeling all the time. So when there came effort, I would shy away from it. Not all effort, mind you. I was still a Red River climber, so if it was pump, I could battle. But if it was a really hard move, I didn't want to try really hard. I wanted to fucking relax through it. I wanted to 3-finger open hand, wave my pinky at the crowd, and not have to try hard. That's how it felt. I didn't want to bear down. I didn't even know how to bear down at that point. And that's something I've had to bring back into my practice. And after bringing it back in, I did my first several V10s and was just able to pull that out faster. Like I could try harder at will. And some of that is still carrying over. I'm still able to turn it on as long as I leave the ground with the intention, I'm going to try really hard. If I ever get on the wall and just go, I don't know, we'll just see, I go right back to let's try and relax and make it feel easy. So I think trying hard is a skill.
I completely agree.
That a lot of people don't give enough credit to.
Yeah.
So.
No, I fully agree. I mean, and it's tough. Like, it's funny you talk about like wanting to climb things effortlessly. Like, there's a lot of times I have to remind myself that hard rock climbing is hard. Like, there's times where it's like, oh, I have this great beta and I have this bump and this drop knee and this is all smooth and great. And then it's just like, fuck, it's still really hard. And then I'm like, oh, wait, it's because it's a hard rock climb. And that's why I'm trying it, is because it's hard and it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And so, there are times where it doesn't matter how perfect everything is. You just have to knuckle down. And I mean, that's something I'm fully guilty of as well. Like, if it used to be that if I didn't know any better, it's like, oh, I'm just going to try harder.
Yep.
And now it's like, I think I'm finally coming around to that more and more. And thankfully I've had some friends call me out on it where, I would just try and beta things down forever to the point to where they're just like, hey man, just try hard and you'll do it. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll give that a try. And I'd try hard and be like, oh, I could have saved myself days, like by just trying really hard.
Yep.
And I think it's definitely a skill. Like, it's hard to cultivate, especially, if you feel like you're trying hard. Like, you're a great example of this. Like, you felt like you were trying really hard when you were at the top of a route, but really that's you powered down to like 60%.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I'm fighting. I'm a great fighter at the top of a route. I'm really trying hard. It's like, well, really, you're like, you're good at giving 60% when you're tired.
Exactly. The maximum I could give at that moment was 60%.
Yeah. And so you were great at holding on at that, but like to be able to just flip the switch off the ground to 100%, I mean, that's very difficult. And that's
really
something
hard.
That takes a lot of effort to be able to do.
Yeah. And you know it when you see it.
Yes.
There are a lot of rock climbers who can pull onto the wall and be, 0 to 1,000, right that second. They're going and they're going hard and they're committed. And I just didn't have that skill.
Yeah.
So it's something I've worked on and it's something I need to continue working on. And I do have that intention occasionally. I think that when I go into the gym, if I want to flash something, I turn that on. If it's a move that I'm falling repeatedly at but getting close to, then it occurs to me, okay, I need to turn that on. I wish I could, and let me rephrase that. Not that I wish, I will in the future work on it more so that I get better at turning it on and off when it needs to be turned on and turned off. Instead of having to fall 4 times and then realize, oh shit, yeah, I just need to try really hard right there. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it's a skill, it needs to be practiced. I used to be really fucking good at it. Now I'm not nearly as good. So, yeah, that's my number 1.
Right on. So my number 2 is being well-rounded versus specializing.
Okay.
And this is something
well-rounded like crack climbing and Vitavu?
Oh, I went that day.
You did.
Yeah. Well-rounded kind of in a lot of senses. I think if we're looking at a more detailed sense, something that I was very guilty of a few years ago, and I like to think I'm finally working away from it more and more, is the special snowflake syndrome, where it's like, I'm different than everyone else. Like, I have my own special needs, all these different things, it's bullshit is what it is. It's me like avoiding the obvious instead of saying like,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's hilarious. Like, I look at like how I climb in the gym or how I've climbed in the past, and I'm trying to avoid it more and more now, and I'm getting better for sure, but it's still hard. Is like, man, I like betaing things down. Like, and there are times where it's just like, oh, this is a straightforward power problem. Like, I should climb it. I'm in the gym. I need to get better at straightforward power. So I should do this how it's set. I shouldn't try and do all these like goofy bicycles or drop knees or things like that. Like, it serves a purpose.
Yep.
And as far as training or just, I think a lot of special snowflake syndrome of just, which for anyone who isn't familiar with it, it's just, really it's just making excuses is what it comes down to. Instead of saying like, hey, like I need to nail down the basics and the fundamentals. It's like, I'm different. Like, so that's something that I used to be, I think, incredibly guilty of. And I try and steer more and more away from it. And I look at, okay, like, yeah, I think like a general base of strength is really important. And that's something I ignored for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I do need to be able to climb straightforward power problems. And You know, I look at the types of routes and the types of boulders I've done, and what have I done that's been hard, and what just shuts me down. It's like, well, how much time do I spend on the things that shut me down?
Right.
Like, am I bad at them just because, you know, I've got short fingers or, you know, some sort of like genetic thing? Or is it like, am I just bad at it because I've been avoiding it forever?
Yep.
Like, and so for me, that's like one type of specialization.
That's how crimping was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you avoid them, you don't get better at them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, just like much more broadly, like honestly, like bouldering versus sport climbing, I definitely used to believe that, you know, a lot of people have said, you know, if you want to advance in a certain sport, you need to specialize in that sport. Because if you try and go across too many things, you're not going to be able to get the most out of one. But it's not like we're trying to like bobsled and do the modern pentathlon or something.
Right.
Like,
and you can't specialize in being a drop knee climber. Like you could, some people do.
yeah.
It doesn't work very well.
Yeah. But I mean, even for me, I don't think I'm a good enough climber that it makes sense for me to be like, oh, I'm only going to boulder to get better at bouldering, or
Right.
I'm only going to sport climb. What I've realized, and Dave McLeod actually wrote something about this, and I just came across it the other day, and it's kind of funny that I came back across it, but he was just like, yeah, I think everyone should like keep sport climbing every now and then just so they remember how to move well. Like even if you are like going full tilt bouldering, like, okay, I'm going to boulder hard. I'm going to put a lot of my effort into it. You should still be sport climbing a little bit so you don't just start moving like an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. When you've got power to burn, like we start developing these affectations. Like suddenly
Power to burn.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like you find yourself locking off moves that you don't need to be locking off, or like campusing around a little bit, like in unnecessary places. Or if you're sport climbing, you don't do that.
Yeah, and I think sport climbing teaches you to move relaxed as well.
Totally.
You know, and maybe that's part of why I wasn't so good at trying hard for those years, because I quit. I didn't do any kind of bouldering. I didn't even go to the gym and boulder. I just went to the gym and sport climbed. Like that was it. You know, I grew up in a bouldering gym. So early on I knew how to try hard. But yeah, I think that you have to sort of play in all disciplines to continue improving. And I think it's a great way to plateau bust as well.
Oh, no kidding. Man, I think it's the best way to go as far as just like kind of alternating between those.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you look at the top climbers in the world today.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
They can all do both well. Like even the best boulders, like you look at Jimmy Webb, like in a few weeks, like of sport climbing, he comes back and he can climb 14 plus.
Yeah, and I got news for all you traddies out there. You're not snowflakes either. If you look at any of the top sport climbers, when they try to switch to trad climbing, they've passed up all the traddies very quickly. You know, Ethan Pringle went and did Cobra Crack when he like had barely crack climbed. You know, it's not. If you're a trad climber and you only go trad climbing, then you're shorting yourself on a lot of learning how to move.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think when we say well-rounded, you know, I made the joke about Vitavu as soon as you said it, but I think that's what we think of, like, oh, a sport climber who needs to learn how to go trad climb. Like needing to go learn how to trad climb is becoming well-rounded. Like that's kind of how it seems the go-to definition of it is, you know. And a lot of trad climbers, I think, would tell you, I think I would have when I was a traddie, that I can go sport climb, I can go boulder because I'm a traddie. Like 512 cracks are way harder than 512 sport. Not true. Not true at all. They're exactly the same grade. That's why they're called exactly the same grade. So I think that doesn't exclude the people who are, you know, have the least common component, which is probably trad climbing.
No.
At least hard trad climbing.
Yeah.
Very uncommon.
Yeah, maybe like iced and mixed climbing.
Yeah, that doesn't even count.
No, but then you look at like Petra Klingler. Like
yeah, a lot of those folks are really great. I mean,
yeah. But yeah, you know, I think it's easy for us to be like, oh, I need to like specialize in a certain thing, or like I am different from everyone else, but you know, it's all climbing. Like the difference between doing an 80-foot sport climbing and doing like a 12-foot boulder isn't as different as we like to think.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Um,
You want to take a break?
yeah, let's take a break.
Take a break. Hey everybody, Chris here. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Since this thing became officially official, I've basically been obsessed. I've got dozens of episodes waiting to go out, and I'm constantly recording new conversations. I want to continue putting this level of energy into it, and you all can help. We've created a page at patreon.com/powercompanypodcast where you can help support what we're building. In return, even for as little as $1 per month, you'll get access to the brand new We Scream Like Eagles podcast, which includes tips from our guests, extra conversations about hot topics, and Q&As with your questions posed to our guests. If you think it's worth more than $1 a month, we've got other rewards available on top of the bonus episodes like stickers, ebooks, t-shirts, and training plans. So if you've been considering pitching in, now's the time. That's patreon.com/powercompanypodcast. Thanks a ton, and back to the show. And we're back. And I'm back with a Slow Elk Oatmeal Stout. Big Sky Brewing, Missoula, Montana. Shout out. I'd like to...
I'm sure they're listening.
They are. Don't doubt, man. Don't doubt.
Got a big fan base in Missoula.
It's true. Actually, we kind of do. But I like to drink stouts, and they are mostly only available in the winter, and that's the main reason that I'm happy that it's blizzarding here in Montana, because I have stouts available to me. So anyway, my number 2, is that where we are?
Yes.
Yeah, so my number 2 is that I wish I still knew that I knew back then that it's not all eyes on me. And that sounds a lot worse than it actually is. It's not that I think when I walk up to the crag, everyone stops and turns and looks at me. It's more like I'm now a coach. You know, I've created, not created, I don't know what the right word is, but my voice is now an authority on this subject. You know, it just is. There's really no way in getting around it. That's why when I go to the crag, everybody wants to ask training questions, you know, and that makes it really tough to want to be okay with failure. You know, if I step onto a route and I fall where it's not expected that I should fall, I feel like everybody's watching. And I can tell that that's happening. So I try to sidestep it as much as possible. And I don't mean I try to avoid it. That was totally the wrong word. I try to address it as much as possible. And I go out of my way to try and get in front of people and do things, you know, and fail. Because I think that it should be put out in the open that I'm not perfect. I'm struggling through this. I'm working through it just like all of you guys are, you know, and I think that's part of why I can be okay with being an authority, because I'm in the same boat. You know, I get it. When I was younger, though, it just didn't matter. I just didn't care. You know, I could go out there and completely be free to try whatever I wanted to try. And if I failed, I failed. If I did it, I did it. There wasn't an 8A to spray on back then. You know, nobody gave a shit. There weren't any internet forums. You know, nobody was talking about it. So early on, it felt a lot freer, you know, and now there are a lot of times where it feels like more people are watching. And you and I have talked about this a little bit. You know, especially because we're coaches. We walk into a gym expecting people to pay us money to coach them, and then we're going to fall on their project. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something I struggle with for sure. Like, I mean, and I know for a fact no one really gives a shit. Like, I walk into the gym and it's like, no one cares. I mean, to be fair, most times when I walk into a gym, I'm wearing my tension t-shirt that Will England gave me. And if anyone asks my name, I just tell them I'm Ben Spaneth and I'm fat now.
If you're having a bad day, you just tell them you're Ben Spaneth.
I'm fat Ben Spaneth. And then it's
Sorry,
fine.
Ben.
Yeah.
Sorry we're defiling and desecrating your name like that.
Yeah. But no, it's a real thing. Yeah. Like, I go in, and especially when we do some of these workshops, like where it's more or less like climb with the power company on our opening nights, and go to a new gym, and we're supposed to be authorities, right? But, at the same time, it's hard for me to remind myself I'm supposed to be falling. Like, if I'm not flailing, like if I'm not, that's what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm bouldering. I should be trying the things that are difficult for me, the things that I'm failing on, the things that I struggle on, that are uncomfortable. If I'm not getting better. And what kind of example am I actually showing?
Right.
But saying this right now is really easy when I'm in front of like 60 people and there's some goofy run and jump volume thing. It's a lot harder.
And you feel like the gym strong dude is gunning for you.
Oh God, and they have everything dialed.
Yeah, exactly. And you almost, like, it goes through my head a lot of the times where I'm like I need to explain that this is their gym and they've got it dialed, and climbing in every gym is different because they've never climbed in another gym, and this is the only place they climb, and they own this place, and I'm not going to be as good at them or as good at this as they are until maybe tomorrow.
But really,
I feel like I should explain that.
Does any of it fucking matter?
No, it doesn't fucking matter at all. So I never do explain it. I'm not that big of an asshole anymore. But I still feel that way. It still creeps into my head. And I've said this before on the podcast, that I'll oftentimes, when I go into the gym, and I did this a little bit today, I look for the problems that don't suit me at all. That are the big, giant, dynamic moves, the things that feel like they're going to be extra difficult for me. And I'll try those, because then I'm just letting everybody know right off the bat, like, I might look really stupid trying this problem at first, but I can spend some time on it. I can figure out the movement. I can dial it in, and maybe I can do it. Maybe I don't. I didn't send either of the problems I tried today. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. My victory was trying to understand and working through these dynamic moves that are difficult for me. So, I think it's part of just the curse of putting yourself out there. Like, some people are going to watch you. Some people are going to wonder why you're failing at their warm-up, but most people don't give a shit.
Yeah, they're there after work. They couldn't care less. They're minding their own business. But yeah, and the thing is, as a coach, we more than anyone need to exemplify what we teach.
Yeah, totally.
I need to go in, get on my vegetable boulders, just get absolutely stomped, and because that's how I get better. I could easily walk in, spot out the hardest thing that looks my style, go and crush it, and then everyone be like, oh wow, he climbs well, that's nice. And then I don't get better. I'll just get worse over time.
Yep.
And then okay, cool, what kind of example am I am I actually walking the walk here, or am I just trying to protect my ego?
Yeah. And I think vegetable, first off, thanks Will Anglin for that term, because Nate's been using it constantly. But I think vegetable boulders are different for different people. Those dynamic, they require some interesting, momentum move. Those are my vegetable boulders. Those are the things I need to do. Those are the things that are going to be the best for me, but they're the things I don't really want to do. And those are a lot of these gym kids. And not even the gym kids, that's totally dismissive of their abilities outside. But a lot of these young crushers, those are their dessert boulders. They eat that shit up. They love it, and they love burning me off on them, and that's fine. Do it. I want to watch them do it so I can learn how the hell to be springy like that. So, yeah.
And what's kind of cool? I was thinking about this the other day. Because I am significantly worse inside the gym than I am outside.
Oh yeah, me too.
Easily 2 to 3 number grades. I wouldn't even know about routes because I don't really sport climb inside. It seems terrifying.
I don't climb harder than 12A inside.
Yeah.
Hell no.
But here's like kind of a fun way to look at it. Like I'm horrible at climbing inside, which is awesome because I can go to any gym anywhere and there will always be plenty of boulders hard enough for me to like be challenged on.
Yeah, totally.
So like you have this great advantage of like these blocky power style, which is like the American like standard for gym setting is your weakness. So cool. You can walk in anywhere.
Yep.
And have that to your advantage.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and another thing I think it's important to say is like, this isn't just like, oh, we're coaches. And so this is something we deal with. Like, man, everyone deals with this as far as like going in and being stressed out. Like I know, like I've climbed with a lot of tiny females like over my climbing career, and man, gym setting is not conducive to them at all. Like unless you can just crimp a lot of foot chips.
Yep.
And so like, man, I've seen this so many times where a girl will walk in. She's like, you know what? Today I'm going to eat my vegetables. I'm going to go over.
She didn't say that.
No, not at all. She was like, I'm going to go hate send this thing real quick.
See what happened here?
But she's like, you know what? Today I'm going to work my weakness. I'm bad at pinches and slopers. So they warm up, they go over, they find something. Maybe it's a couple grades easier than what they normally do. They get into it and they're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, you know what? It's challenging. I'm having fun and it's just them. Then all of a sudden, Becky with the big hands walks over and just hikes it for her warm up.
With the big hands.
And,
oh man, that was a good one. You're on your game tonight.
So now they have this like crossroads of, okay, like I was having fun. It was nice. I was doing my own thing. But suddenly someone
get over Becky with the big hands.
Suddenly this girl had to walk over and just crush my pinch project in my face. So, you know, they have an option of, do they bite the bullet? Do they keep trying this thing that's going to make them better? That's challenging for them, even though it doesn't have a high number. Or do they go to the 45 and go show Becky what their little raccoon paws can do and just crimp up her project?
Right. Yep. They go right back to their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And they stop learning because of it, you know? And I think a lot of times I've definitely done that. You know, that was my fucking mission back in the day. Like anytime there was just an idiot dude in there, it was my mission to show them up, you know? But now it's like there have been times where I've done that. I'm like, oh, I can just go crush that problem right now, you know? But then it never feels good. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, you do it and you're like, well, no shit, I did it. Yeah. Like I knew I was going to do it. Now I'm just more tired.
That sucked. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know, man. There was definitely a time, this is one of my proudest moments in the gym. And this was a few years ago when I was still in Cincinnati. And there was and I might have mentioned this on the podcast already. I've definitely mentioned it in workshops. There was a problem that was set as a big double dyno, you know, this kind of sideways double dyno, jug to jug. But I was sure as hell not going to double dyno. Mm-hmm. And I found...
Because if you have good technique, you don't double dyno, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You don't do that shit. Nobody does that. Only the people who suck do that, you know, which is ridiculous. And I found very quickly, I may have even flashed it, found a way to not do the double dyno. Mm-hmm. And I was like proud of that. Like,
of course.
Like, oh, look, I can fucking crush this thing and I don't do that stupid move, you know? But then I saw one of the young, super egotistical gym crushers do the move, you know? And this kid, like, he got on my nerves only because he was so egotistical. And then it occurred to me, like, fuck, that's what I'm doing. You know, I'm just being a jackass by flaunting that I can do it without the double dyno. Mm-hmm. Why don't I try the double dyno? So I tried it while he was sitting there, him and his friends, you know, and fell on my ass. Like, didn't even touch the hold, fell on my ass. It looked ridiculous. And it took me probably, I don't know, 8 tries, you know, and I'm like, hey, do that again. Like, I want to see the way you're doing that. And he'll do it again. He crushes it. It looks super easy. And I try to mimic what he does. And eventually I do it. And then I do it a few more times to try to smooth it out. And, you know, to pat myself on the back, he never tried it my way, you know? and I only say that because he was being just as egotistical as I was. I was being just as egotistical as he was. But on that occasion, and I don't do this on every occasion, but on that occasion, I took the opportunity to learn, and he didn't. And I think that, that he missed out on something.
Now you're here to publicly let him know you took the higher road.
Yeah.
Doing great, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. You should be following me.
I'm glad this hasn't haunted you for years.
And I think back on a lot of times where I didn't take that opportunity to learn, and I wish I would have.
Yeah, I mean, I know I spent years not taking the opportunity to learn with a lot of things.
Yep. So that was my number 2. What's your number 3?
I really like that one. I don't know. I've got a couple.
You can only choose one.
This one, it's kind of a hodgepodge. So it was going to be the beginner's mindset, which is just, not being afraid to fail, like just trying anything. Like, man, watching the kids tonight was awesome.
Getting super creative and trying crazy beta. And
yeah. Like watching youth teams, especially when kids are like super young and I won't say they don't know better, but like they're just like these little balls of energy and intuition and creativity. Like they just don't give a fuck about anything. They're just like, I'm just going to try and throw a heel over my head. I don't care that I'm, this shouldn't work. And they just do crazy things. And sometimes they just completely surprise you. And it's really fun to watch. Like, and they'll just go through all these different combinations. And man, there's times where it's like, how did you think of that? Like that worked really, really well.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, and then like the next thing they try, it's just like, whoa, like, I naturally want to be like, pull it back. But at the same time, that's their creativity and like this.
Yeah. Let it go.
Yeah.
And I'm a little envious of that for sure, because when I was a beginner and my beginner mindset was you climb like Francois Legrand or you don't climb. Mm-hmm. Like that's how it felt. Like 3 points of contact, drop knee every move, do not bend your arms, and that's how you climb, period.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like what I was talking about earlier. Like I think when I first started, it was very much just like, you're just kind of clumsily feeling your way around and you're like, like your drop knee in the wrong way. And like, there are no rules. Like, but that's just it. Like even now there are no rules. Like
totally.
You can do whatever you want. And if it works, sick.
Like that back heel. You know? It looks ridiculous. It looks ridiculous every single time anyone on earth does it. But sometimes that's the way to do the move. Yeah,
doing like a back step heel hook, which is like just super goofy. I mean, it's about as utilized as the front flag.
Yeah, exactly. Which I saw yesterday.
I was probably a kid and they didn't even care. They were just like, watch me throw this front flag.
Yeah, it was hilarious. They were like, it was doing the one leg drills. And he just automatically went into a front flag. And I was like, whoa. I was like, have you ever done that before? No. What did I do?
It just felt right. What you mean. Yeah, I just did what felt natural.
Yeah, it was cool.
So that was kind of like what I was going to go with, the whole beginner mindset. I feel like we kind of covered it with the last one.
Yep.
But yeah, so the next one, like it's kind of a hodgepodge. Like I feel like there are just things that I did really well over time, or I've done during certain periods. And maybe I was doing so much at the time that I didn't realize this one thing worked really well.
Okay.
So a really good example is how I trained before I went to Wild Iris. So this was like 4 years ago. I wanted to get strong on pockets. So for like the 2 months ahead of time, all I had access to was a little like woody in a barn. And I was like, well, there are no pockets. So I'm just going to do circuits on the jugs and like more or less like project boulders on the jugs. But I would only grab them with my middle 2 fingers or like different 2-finger pairs.
Right.
And so I got really good at just like pulling with those fingers. I didn't have the constriction of a pocket. And I don't know, I was just literally just climbing on jugs. And so at the time I was like, I think this is working. Like I feel more comfortable. I went out and I had like, man, I had a fantastic like 10 days. Like I think I climbed like 7 or 8 new 513s, which at the time for me was enormous. Like that doubled any week I'd ever had. I had flashed a 13B, which was like maybe the first 13 I ever did first try. Like everything I was doing in like 2-3 tries. And I was like, I don't understand why people think lander's hard. Like I feel great on pockets.
Yep.
And then I actually ended up injuring a finger very severely, which kind of caused me to forget about all this. Like the finger injury was because I went way too many days on. I did a trail day, like, used a shovel for 8 straight hours, woke up the next day, could barely open my hands. They were so stiff and I was so dehydrated. And then the next day I went rock climbing and got on something super pockety.
Yep.
and got injured. And it wasn't, and so yeah, like I kind of forgot how good everything went. Like, and that was my first time in Lander, so I didn't know any better. And so it wasn't until this year that I went back to Wild Iris and started climbing on the things that I was like climbing in 1 and 2 goes. And I was just like, oh, like I was in really, really good shape for this.
Right.
Like I did something well. And I bumped into Ander Rockstad. He came out his first time ever in Lander, and he was like, yeah, I've been doing a lot of like mono hangs and like pocket hangs and trying to get my tendons ready. But it just doesn't feel like it worked correctly. He's like, I can kind of hang them, but I can't pull on them.
Right.
And
Can't
that's when
make the big moves.
Yeah. And that's when this all kind of clicked. I was like, oh, like I was just practicing like grabbing things as 2 fingers and pulling really hard. And when I got there, it worked great. Yep. But it wasn't until I came back and realized I was woefully unprepared to grab like monos and 2s again.
Yeah, you came back this year and everybody in Lander was like, dang, I thought Nate was strong.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. I guess I'm just going to go deadlift for a while, guys. But, there were a lot of things like that I'm starting to realize they worked really well, but it's not until I stopped doing them and then tried to go through a similar experience again that I'm like, oh, I should probably pick that back up again.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there was what was going to be my third, which I've already changed, sort of was more about like that I wish I had looked at the, the bigger picture instead of digging into the minutia. I wish I still knew how to do that. Because you can get lost in that minutia, like trying to be too specific to your goal and just believing what everyone else says is. That's not even a word. Believing what everyone else says, and then you end up trapped. You take the things that worked for you before and totally discount them.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a lot. It's happened to me quite a few times.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, to give another example, something that, you can kind of take with a grain of salt. When I started rock climbing, everything I did up until that point was I was a distance runner. So my style was very much formed around, I was really strong at grabbing and pulling with my feet. And like, you've climbed with me enough, like that's still very much how I climb.
Right.
Like I grab with my toes and I pull. Like that is just how I do everything. And so to this day, when I'm in good running shape, man, my legs get so much stronger and I climb harder. And I've gone through these waves of being like, no, I should probably stop running because people say so.
Right.
And when I get back into it, also like, and this is something I didn't kind of piece together till the other day. I was climbing with a doctor friend, but I'm asthmatic, and it for a lot of my adult life it hasn't been a big deal because I was on a swim team and I ran cross country, and so that actually built up my lungs to the point to where it wasn't even a thing.
Yep. Made your aerobic system a little more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's funny is like I kind of dropped off running about 2 years ago. I get really winded on routes now, like to the point to where I was trying a route the other day and I would actually have to stop at a shake hold and shake out. I felt fine, but I would have to be able to like slow my breathing because it was like borderline panic zone. So like my breathing holds
and
me
this
back.
was in Kentucky or West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Yeah. If you get winded in West Virginia, something's wrong.
Yeah. So, but that was just it. And like, I know when I'm in good running shape, like that's not a problem. My legs are a lot stronger. I can pull harder. Also, this kind of goes back to intuition versus logic. Like, I really like trying hard.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, we shouldn't be doing like the Rocky, the Jane Fonda, the Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of training. Yeah, I said Jane Fonda. But like the whole feel the burn, feel the pump, like just like putting your head down and doing a ton of work. Like
the pump lust, as Eric Hurst put it.
Yes. Like, I get it. We're not supposed to do it. But I fucking love that shit, man. Like, I really enjoy just like working hard. Like, that gets me so psyched. And so what I've realized is when I'm running hard, like I get that benefit. And frankly, it doesn't slow down my climbing. Like, I have such a background of track and cross country that like I can run hard. If I'm not training for a marathon or if I'm not trying to like break 4 in the mile, like it's not going to hurt my climbing. But I can kind of get out that excess energy and excess, like, I'm going to go out, I'm just going to like try and rip off as many fast miles as possible. And then I can go be very sensible with my rock climbing training. Like, but I have to get it out somewhere. Otherwise, like, I just kind of lose my mind.
Yeah, totally.
So that's something that I'm starting to come around more and more to. Things like that. Like, okay, what did I used to do really well? Even if maybe on paper it didn't make sense. Like, there's no research backing this.
Yep.
But it's like, it worked for me. Like, I know without question for me it worked. So I'm trying to come back to them.
Yeah. And I've been thinking a little bit of, along these lines, because my first foray into hangboarding was wildly successful. Part of that is that I was a beginner and my finger strength was horrible because
noob gains.
Yeah, noob gains, exactly. Because I'd been a traddy, and which essentially are noob gains.
Yeah, everything's a noob gain at that point. I mean, did you ever use your hands?
Did I ever what?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
Your grip training was actually just open, like pulling the trigger on a cam.
Yeah, I only use the back of my hands. I don't use my fingertips for anything. But so my first season of hangboarding, I didn't really know any better, so I went to failure a lot. Like, a lot of my hangs were totally to failure. They weren't like 45-second hangs to failure. I was finding holds that were small enough or weight that was high enough that I would be failing in, sometimes 2 seconds. I could pull on, barely hold the hold, and I would do that for weeks and weeks. And then after several weeks, I could hold that hold for 15, 18 seconds.
Yeah.
Is that making gains? Yeah, that's making gains.
Yeah. Objectively, you're doing better.
That shit works.
Yes.
And even though science says that shouldn't work,
yes,
that's not the way to train. For me at that time, it worked really well. Yeah. And at this point in the game, I'm thinking I should go back and try another round of that. See if I see the same kind of gains. Am I risking injury? Yes. But I'm also old, and I'm risking injury every damn time I stand up out of bed.
Pretty much.
So, and I think I'm good enough at this point, or I'm aware enough at this point that I can rein it in when I feel like injury's about to happen. Because, like you've always said, we all know when it's about to go down. Mm-hmm. Like, we know when something's about to go bad, and we just go, one more. And as long as I'm very vigilant about not going to that one more, then I think I'll be okay. Because I wasn't exactly a spring chicken when I started hangboard training. I mean, I was a 30-something-year-old.
I think you've always been 40, as far as I've known.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, it's funny. I was in the gym. I was in TBA the other day, and there's a woman who asked, like, a local strong guy. She was like, what should I do for hangboarding? And I wish I would have written this down, because it was beautiful. Like, it was just this, like, great, like, 20-word summation of what good hangboarding was. He was just like, well, find a bad hold that you can hang off of. If you can hang for longer than 10 seconds, find something worse. And if you hang on tiny crimps, it'll get you better at tiny crimps. And that was it. And I was just like, that was fucking brilliant. Like, man, totally, you just explained what books have attempted in, like, hundreds of pages.
Right.
And, like, but that's just it. Yeah. It's like, just try hard sometimes. Like,
yeah.
Are
we at my number 3?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. My number 3, and this was a last minute addition, is that you can't take a day for granted. You have to make the most of it. Back in the day, and not so long ago, just a few years ago, when I was a weekend warrior, I was really, really dialed into, we're going to make the most of this day. We would go out with a crew of 3 or 4, and we would sometimes hit 3 or 4 crags. Everybody get burns on their projects. Everybody feel like they got in a full day.
Dude, Weekend Warriors go hard.
Weekend Warriors go hard. And Dave McLeod's 9 out of 10 books. He mentions.
He says, fear the Weekend Warriors.
Fear the Weekend Warrior. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, those people have drive. They've got a plan, they've got an agenda, and they're about to go hard, and they will steamroll over you if they need to.
Yeah, man. By the way, speaking of Weekend Warriors, huge shout out to Brian Sunte.
Oh, yeah.
Local Weekend Warrior for crushing, or I guess not local to Montana.
No, not local to Montana.
But
local to the Red River Gorge. Though.
Yeah, for crushing 50 words for pump. That's awesome, man. Like,
stoked for you, Brian. That's
this guy
awesome.
who's been out there putting in the effort and putting in the work, and just shows what a Weekend Warrior is capable of doing.
Yeah, exactly. And now that I'm no longer a weekend warrior, I haven't fucking rock climbed in who knows how long. Like, I can go rock climbing every day.
Suddenly you don't.
I've got boulders 15 minutes from my front door that I haven't done. Mm-hmm. Why don't I go try them? Because I can try them tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll get around to it.
Mm-hmm. Someday.
You know, and that could go on for years.
And for a lot of people, it does.
Yeah, and not, you know, granted, we did just buy a house, so I'm working on the house and I'm building a business. But so what? I was working my ass off when I was a weekend warrior all week long. I could still go out and make the most out of the 1 or 2 days I get to go rock climbing. You know, I had a little girl at the time. Now she's 20. She's living in Lander with me. Not with me, but she's living in Lander. I don't have to watch over her anymore. I don't have to babysit. You know, I can go hang out with her in the evenings after I'm done climbing. But I still don't go climbing. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's probably the most relevant one. The one that's the most current for me is that I need to be getting out there. I need to be putting in the reps. I need to be climbing a bunch of pitches. I need to be doing a bunch of moves, and I need to be climbing.
Yeah.
You know, so I did more climbing being able to spend, how many did I spend in general? 1, 2, 3, 4. I spent about 7 days a month climbing outside at my peak as a weekend warrior. And I got way more done then with the nearest climbing being 2.5 hours away than I do now with the nearest climbing being 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah. Man, it's the power of a deadline. And like, you value the time, like that small bit of time you have. Mm-hmm. Not that you have all the time in the world right now, but
yeah, but I have time. Mm-hmm. Like, I could go for 45-minute sessions 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. You know, I could easily do that. There's no question that I could easily. I spend at least 45 minutes eating fucking M&Ms, so I could spend that bouldering. You know?
Yeah. No, it's, you know, and this kind of goes back to the whole beginner mindset thing. Like, man, I love being around just honestly anyone who's psyched, but like you see beginners and they're just like, it's like, oh, it's 102 out. I remember my first climbing trip. I went out with a bunch of guys. We didn't know any better. This is in Texas in like August. We went out for like 2 days. All we had was like Polish sausage and Tang. And like, we were fucking psyched, man. Like, and like the water that was coming, it was Enchanted Rock too, which is giant granite dome of just like choss. Yep. And like the water that was coming out of the spigot was so hot that you just had to like pour in as much Tang as you could to make it stomachable because you were drinking like semi-boiling water.
Is Tang stomachable?
I mean, it's made for astronauts, Chris.
It was when I was 20. I don't think it's stomachable for me anymore.
Oh man.
Just saying.
But yeah, it's like, I still, like, there wasn't a negative thing said on that whole trip. Like, I have a friend who fell in a cactus. Like, there was not a bad word said.
Still
we were
stoked to climb.
So amped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and you climb around, like, people now, like, they're just getting into it, or like, they're really like hitting their stride. Like, when people are on the upswing, man, those are the people you want to be around. And it's just nice to be reminded of like, oh, that's right. Like, that's what it looks like to be passionate.
Yep.
And it's cool. And I have a lot of respect for people there's a lot of people who can keep that drive, even like they've been climbing 20 years and they're just as psyched as someone who's like 10 days into it. And it's awesome. Like, I love being around those people.
Yeah, totally. And like when Tanner Wilson came out to Lander for the Climbers Festival, and you know, I took him out to the rock shop and showed he and his girlfriend Jessie around, and they were stoked. Like, Tanner is this giant ball of psych. I mean, that's just what he is. And then I saw him like 3 days later, and he's like, I've climbed all 3 days. I went night climbing after we went bouldering, and then I went out to this crag the next day and this crag the next day, and I'm going climbing tomorrow, and you want to climb tonight? I'm like, oh my God, dude, you know? And at the time I was insanely busy, but I don't want to use that as an excuse anymore. I want to put the time into my schedule. Right now, my schedule gets full, and then I'm like, I'll find time to climb. That's not how it used to be, and that's how it can't continue to be. Climbing has to be in my schedule, and then I'll find time to fit the other things in. So I think you're right. I mean, having those people around who are super stoked is great.
Yeah.
And it's funny, BJ Tilden, local strong guy in Lander, he's essentially a weekend warrior. And he gets out and he gets shit done.
Yeah.
And
you were talking about try hard.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes the most of every day at the crag, every day at the boulder. And he's essentially a weekend warrior. I have so much more free time than BJ does, but he schedules climbing into his week. He's like, Wednesdays are climbing day, Tilden Construction shuts down on Wednesdays. We're going rock climbing, and he'll text me like, you want to go climbing? And I'm like, I don't know. I got all this to do, and finally just last week I was like, he texted me and I'm like, all right, I'm in. I didn't even look at the weather. It was 23 fucking degrees, but it turned out to be an amazing day. And if I had looked at the weather, if I had thought about, are there other things I can do? I sure as hell would not have gone rock climbing. I'd have found some other things to do. There's a million things I could be doing, but I want to go rock climb. So that shit needs to be on my schedule.
Yeah.
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 So I implore any of you out there, if you run into me at the crag, at the gym, via email, at the grocery store, I don't care. If you run into me and you're like, hey, how's climbing? And I'm like, oh, I haven't been climbing. I'm so busy.
Karate chop him in the throat.
Karate chop me in the throat. Just be like, shut the fuck up, dude. Go rock climbing. Yeah, I need that.
Oh. One more thing to just kind of add to valuing every day is, and this is something that I feel like I have been guilty of and I'm really working on now, is I'll kind of forget where I'm at in this moment, and I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, like come December when I've got a month to train. This is a program I'm going to be doing then, and it's going to be great. And a lot of times I do stick to that kind of stuff, but it's like, okay, but what am I doing today? Like, what can I do today to make tomorrow's session better? Like, can I drink more water? Can I do some self-massage? Can I do core? I can do core every day. Like, you can always do core.
Yeah. Can you just sit back and enjoy it? Like, can I just hang out here and watch, and just enjoy where I'm at right in this moment?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like it's really I've struggled with always looking at and here in the future, things will be better. I'll have access to more things, or, somehow it'll magically smooth out, or somehow it makes more sense to push things off a month from now, or 2 months or 3 months from now. But I'm starting to realize I need to just focus on what I'm doing today. What can I do today to make tomorrow better, to make the next week better? Because it doesn't matter what I'm doing for what kind of training I'm doing in December until December hits. It's cool, I've got a couple weeks until that happens. Or, it doesn't matter what I'm doing next summer. It's what am I doing today and tomorrow and the next day?
Yeah, and you just sparked something in my memory. When I would spend a few weeks in the summer in Lander, I would go climbing with BJ, and it was constant talk about conditions, and I mean constant, all day long. I feel like the humidity just dropped 2%, and I'd be like, shut the fuck up, dude. You have no idea what you're talking about. And when we went out the other day, and I used to think it was funny, I used to just be like, this shit is crazy. When we went out the other day, and I didn't begrudgingly, that's the wrong word, but
but it's what I got right now.
That's what I got right now. I went out, and when I left, I was thinking, there's other shit I could be doing. And it's 23 degrees, and it's freezing out here, and it was overcast, and we were hoping for sun, but sun wasn't happening.
Yeah, and that's 23 degrees Fahrenheit for y'all across the pond.
Yeah, exactly. That's cold. And then my knees hurt on the way down, and I'm just miserable, going to Wolf Point. The hike there's kind of heinous anyway, and the way down wrecked me. So I was like, the way up's going to suck. But the whole time they're talking about conditions. You know, should we go? Shouldn't we go? What if the sun comes out? The sun's going to come out. The sun's going to be out in 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, the sun's going to be out in 10 minutes. You know, constant talk about conditions. And I was like, at first I was like, this is crazy, you know? And then I'm like, you know what? These dudes are on a schedule. Like Tony and BJ, you know, Tony works for BJ. They've got today. They need to do it today. Tom's an ER doctor. Tom's got today. I've got every day. Mm-hmm. Like I could be doing this every day, but these dudes are dialed in. They're focused. They need to rock climb today. You know, so this constant chatter really is just a way for them to convince themselves that it's going to be a good day. You know, they will talk themselves into the fact that conditions are going to get good. And then they did. And BJ sent his project, a new 14C. Tom fell on the last move of his long-term project and threw the most amazing wobbler I've ever seen.
That was on video. It was great.
It's on the Instagrams. Tom Rangich. You should go find him and watch this wobbler. It's amazing. And then that was inspiring to me. Like, these guys are making the most of this day. You know, they came here, they chatted and chattered, and like there was a lot of talk of maybe we had already walked over to Wolf Point, and they're like, maybe we should just go back to town and get crash pads and go bouldering. And I'm like, y'all are nuts. There's no way I'm going back out bouldering.
You just hiked like 45 minutes to get out there, uphill both ways.
Oh man, it takes me like an hour and a half. But it's crazy. It is uphill both ways.
I know. Sucks. That's actually, it works. That phrase works that way.
But those dudes were making the most of the day. And I was like, okay, when I get back from Montana, this is what it's got to be. I've got to put it in my schedule. That's got to be the time slot. And I can't say, never mind, I can do it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I've got to commit.
So basically what you're saying is you're like, okay, I'm going to live for today starting 2 weeks from now.
Starting 2 weeks from now. I'm going to live for today starting sometime on the road.
Good plan.
Yeah. All right.
Anything
else from you?
No, I'm glad we finally got to do this one. I've had this in this notebook for a hot minute.
It was a lot better than I thought. I thought it was going to
thanks.
suck.
Thanks.
No, I'm just kidding. I like the idea all the time. We didn't get to it.
Yeah. Well, here we are in Montana with a blizzard around us, so
it's blizzarding, but we're gonna make the most of it.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna talk to the parents tomorrow, and it's gonna be amazing.
Boom.
You guys out there know exactly where to find us, and if you don't, I'm gonna tell you. It's at powercompanyclimbing.com. We sell training plans over there. We've got some products like process journals and finger care kits, and we've got every training plan you could possibly want over there. So if you're interested in working with us, look into it. Nate's got room for some custom clients. Paul and Blake likely do as well at the time that you're hearing this. I probably do not, but I might. So email us, see what we got. I'm probably out climbing because I'm trying to live my number 3. You can also find us on the social medias. Please share this shit. Share it everywhere. Share it on your Facebooks, share it on your Instagrams, share it on your Pinterests if you got a Pinterest. You can even share it on your Twitter. That would be amazing because you're not going to find Power Company Climbing on Twitter because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build.